So good morning. Today we are going to study a new topic, that is retrofitting of concrete structures. So let's see what is retrofitting. So retrofitting of structural member is carried out to regain the strength of deteriorated structural concrete elements and to prevent further distress in the concrete. So basically the retrofitting is carried out. That is, it is carried out to give strength to the deteriorated structural concrete elements such as beams, columns, beam column joints, etc. and it prevents further deterioration or distress in the concrete. The strength deficiency of a concrete structural member can be due to poor workmanship, design errors, and deterioration due to aggression of harmful agents. So, retrofitting is the upgradation of certain building system to make them more resistant to seismic activity. This structure can be earthquake damaged or earthquake vulnerable. It proves to be better economic and immediate shelter to the problems rather than replacement. So rather than going for a demolition of the structure, we can give strength to the structure so that it could be used for further long period of time. So there are considerable members of reinforced concrete structures in India that do not meet the requirement of the current design standards because of inadequate design or construction errors which need structural upgradation, especially to meet the seismic design requirement. So especially the structures which are located in the seismic activity area, they are not designed in such a way that it will be able to protect itself from the seismic activity. So in such cases, we can go for this retrofitting. So in recent earthquakes all over the world, it has highlighted the consequences of poor performance of beam column joint. And the failure is because of the shear failure in beams, bar slip and shear failure of beam columns joint. So let's see the common problems which are faced by the concrete structures. The first one is structural cracks. You can see that in the figure. Then damage to the structural members such as beams, columns, etc. Then due to the excessive loading which the building has to hold on. Then errors in design or construction. Then modification of structural system, seismic damage and corrosion due to penetration. Now let's see the stages of retrofitting. First, we have to select, like the selection of the objective of the retrofit. That means whether, for what reason we are going for a retrofitting. Whether we are going for the retrofitting of a column, whether we are going for a retrofitting of a beam, or whether we are going for a retrofitting of a column beam joint. So that selection is to be done. Okay. Then reviewing the initial consideration. What are the consideration you have given into that? Whether you have considered the loads coming on that, or whether you have considered the seismic activity which is acting on such building, etc. Then we have to obtain the information regarding the building, like the load which is coming on this building, what all impact this building has faced and what are deterioration it has gone through, then what are the loads, and as a result of the seismic activity, what are the damages the building is suffering, and how long this building whether this building has been maintained has undergone maintenance work in the near future, and how etc. Then life of the building, etc. should be considered. Then the seismic evaluation. In the seismic evaluation, we will be studying the damages which is caused to the building due to the seismic activity. Then we have to decide on whether to retrofit or we have to go for a demolition or a complete replacement, etc. Then we have to select and design of retrofit strategies. So certain strategies has to be imparted, like what has to be done next and what method could be adopted. That design of retrofit strategies is the next step. Then we have to verify the retrofit schemes. Then only we will move on to the construction, and after construction we will be monitoring and maintaining it properly. These are the stages of retrofitting, and this see, especially in the question papers, they have asked about what is retrofitting, and they have asked about how the retrofitting of the columns are done and how the retrofitting of the beams are done. So in all these cases you have to mention about the stages of this retrofitting, or the method or the steps we will follow in a retrofitting. Then what are the different methods which are adopted for the RCC structural members? First is fiber reinforced polymer composites. Then by using external plate bonding. Then near surface mounted FRP bars or strip. Then section enlargement, external post tensioning, grouting and epoxy injection. So what are the factors governing the selection of a retrofitting method? So how we will select the above methods? First, we have to find out the existing concrete strength. Based on that, we can select a method. Then, how is our accessibility to the work area? That is another criteria. So, maybe one method will be suitable for this, but maybe we won't have an access to the working area. So, we cannot use that method. So, then magnitude of the strength to be enhanced. Cost of construction and maintenance. The time constraints. The clearance issue. The seismic effect consideration and the environmental impact. So these factors are the main governing factor for the selection of a particular retrofitting method. Then this retrofitting strategy. This strategy is to be followed in any type of retrofitting work which has been carried out in a beam or a column or a joint, etc. First is specify the performance requirement for the structural member that needs to be retrofitted. So what is the performance you are expecting from the structural member that is going to be retrofitted? How long you want this column to exist, or how much capacity load this column should withstand? All this factor should be specified. Then we have to set an overall plan from inception phase to the retrofitting method selection, the design of retrofitting structure and execution of retrofitting work. So we have to develop an overall plan from the initial phase to the retrofitting method selection, the design of retrofitting structure and also the execution of the retrofitting work. After finalizing the plan, we have to inspect the structural element which has to be retrofitted. Then we have to evaluate the performance of the structural element based on the findings of the inspection work. Okay, based on the inspection, we have to evaluate the performance of the structural member. Then check whether the structural element fulfills the performance requirements. If the structure does not fulfill the performance requirement, and if continued use of the structure through retrofitting is desired, proceed with the design of the retrofitting structure. Okay, then we have to select an appropriate retrofitting method. Next step is to specify the materials which are to be used, the structural specification and the construction method. Then we have to evaluate the performance of the structure after retrofitting and verify that it fulfills the performance requirements. And if it is determined that the retrofitting structure is capable of fulfilling the performance requirement with the selected retrofitting and construction methods, then we can implement the retrofitting work. So these strategies you have to study well, because whenever you are asked to write something about this retrofitting and how this retrofitting of the column or beam is done, so this strategy is also be written. The steps of retrofitting should be written. The strategies which are adopted in retrofitting should be written, and then you can write one or two methods which has been used. You can specify the different methods which are used for retrofitting. Then you can give an explanation regarding one or two methods. So how could this retrofitting be done? The first one is strengthening of existing member, which could be done by RC jacketing, steel plate bonding and jacketing, steel section caging, plate bonding and jacketing, etc. And next is by adding new members, that is by shear walls, by bracing, by means of providing buttresses, etc. See, these are the retrofitting technique. In some question paper, it has been asked about the different types of retrofitting techniques. So one is global technique and the other one is the local technique. The global technique is by addition of shear wall, addition of infill, addition of bracing, addition of buttresses, wall thick ceilings, mass reduction, supplemental damping and base isolation. While the local one is made up of jacketing of beams, jacketing of columns, jacketing of beam column joint and strengthening the individual building. So let's see the retrofitting of masonry structure. Example, the vulnerable building. So we can go for external binding or jacketing. We can go for shotcreting. We can go for strengthening of the wall intersections. We can strengthen the cross walls. We can strengthen the buttresses. That means strengthening by buttresses means we will be providing external support from outside the building. I will show you the picture regarding the same. Then strengthening of arches, etc. See, here the overall lapping at the junction is given. Okay, here the plasters will say overall tapping and junctions are given. The wire mesh is provided here. Nailing is done here. Okay, this is strengthening of wall intersections. See, here the strengthening of wall is done. You can see the mesh like thing. Then see, by providing a cross wall, the strengthening could be done. Then by providing buttresses, we can strengthen the building. Now let's study one particular method, that is concrete jacketing, which is strengthening of building columns, which is commonly used for strengthening the building columns. So when they ask you about this, how this retrofitting of a column is done, you can write down the steps, you can write down the different strategies, then you can write down the different methods, and then you can specifically write about this one of the method. That is, so let's see what is concrete jacketing. It's the most common type of jackets are steel jacket, reinforced concrete jacket, fiber reinforced polymer composite jacket, jacket with high tension materials like carbon fiber, glass fiber, etc. So the reinforced concrete jacketing can be employed as a pair of strengthening scheme. So damaged regions of the existing member should be repaired prior to their jacketing. So what are the main purpose of this jacketing the columns? It will increase the shear capacity of the column. So it will help to accomplish a strong column. Okay, if sometimes if the column there is a column and the beam design is very weak, this jacketing will increase the shear capacity of the columns. So it will help to accomplish a strong column. Okay, then to improve the column's structural strength by the longitudinal steel of the jacket made continuous through the slab systems are anchored with the foundation. So it will help to improve the column's flexural strength. Then what are the necessity of jacketing? That means the load carried by the column is increased when there is an error in design, when there is deterioration of column due to weathering action, when there is dilapidation of column, when there is heavy damage on the column due to other causes like earthquake, fire, etc. So in all these conditions, we can go for jacketing of the column. So while they ask about this column jacketing, you can write about the necessary situation where we are moving on for jacketing of the column. When the load which is carried by the column is increased, when there is error in the design, when there is deterioration of column due to weathering action, when there is dilapidation of column, and when there is heavy damage on the column due to earthquake, fire, etc. Then what are the different types of jacketing? That is reinforced concrete jacketing, which we have discussed, the steel jacketing, fiber reinforced polymer composite jackets, and jackets with high tension members like carbon fiber, glass fiber, etc. And what is the procedure and how this has been carried out? So it can be employed as a pair of strengthening scheme. So this jacketing is employed as a repair or strengthening scheme. First, prepare the surface of existing structural member. So first we have to clean the surface of the existing structural member. Then we have to provide a shear key and reinforcement around the existing column. We have to provide a key and a reinforcement around the existing column. Then bonding agent is applied over the prepared surface of existing column and where the concrete is casted. See, this is the shear key. So first we have to drill holes of specified diameter and depth to receive the shear key. Then we have to clean the drilled holes by blowing the air. Then we have to inject the epoxy bonding paste into the drilled holes to fill it from end to half of the holes. Then we have to insert this L-shaped shear key and allow epoxy to cure. And why we are inserting this shear key? Because it bond properly new concrete and the old concrete. It holds the main reinforcement in position. It treats a monolithic column. The whole section is effective. It resists shear failure and it improves the shear resistance and it reduces the sliding effect between new and hollow column. See, this is the reinforcement. That is, as per design, this reinforcement is fixed around existing column and this reinforcement is properly tied with the shear key during binding the wire. See, you can see this. The shear key is placed inside this. Then bonding agent. So what are the why this bonding agent is used? We have already told that bonding agent is required to have a proper bond between the new concrete and the old concrete. So this bonding agent should be applied to the surface of old concrete before casting of new concrete. Generally, epoxy bonding paste is used as bonding agent. Its function is it's bond properly new concrete and the old concrete and it treats a monolithic column and the whole section is effective. Then casting of concrete, that is the formwork is installed around existing column and proper support is provided to withstand the newly poured concrete. And finally the concrete is poured and the curing is done. Now let's see some of the global methods. That is by addition of infill walls. That is to increase the lateral stiffness of a story. Addition of infill walls in the ground story is a viable option to retrofit the building. Okay, so you see here there is no brick walls. Okay, it is closely packed with a mortar. So due to the strut action of the infilled walls, the flexural and the shear force and the ductility demand on the ground story columns are reduced. So this addition of infill walls is one method of retrofitting the building. Then addition of steel braces. It can be inserted in a frame to provide lateral stiffness, strength and ductility. The braces can be added at exterior frames and for an open ground story. The braces can be placed in appropriate way with least disruption of the building used. Since the braces are connected to the frames at beam column joint, the forces resisted by the braces are transferred to the joints in the form of axial forces. See, new type the braces are provided. This is jacketing of column and this is the concrete jacketing of the beam. Okay, let's go into the existing beam. So these are some of the university questions which has been repeatedly asked. I have gone through 5 question papers and has found these questions being repeated in all these question papers. So they will ask about retrofitting. Then what are the methods of what are the materials which are used for retrofitting of concrete structures? What are the methods of retrofitting of RCC beams? This one we will discuss. Okay. Then what is retrofitting? What is meant by global and local retrofitting, which we have discussed. Then explain any 3 methods to retrofit a reinforced concrete column, which we have discussed today, and explain the various methods of retrofitting column with sketches. So study the sketches also. Okay, so study these portions clearly and submit it today. So we will be dealing with the retrofitting part tomorrow also. This is only part of it we have covered it. Okay, thank you.